Many developmental questions of interest focus on theoretical causal connections. Discuss research methods necessary to gather evidence for causal models. Teachers, counselors, and Congress want us to explain why things happen. For example, women are more likely to be depressed than men. We don't know why. To answer these questions, we do qualitative studies. They are intense observations to understand why things work. This is the traditional scientific method. One way to prove something is causing something else is to do an experiment. How to prove A plus B cause C? First try to do an experiment. It is the only way to provide cause. This is done by randomly assigning people to treatment or control, but it is sometimes unethical to do an experiment. For example, randomly assigning some parents to spank and some not to spank their children. So there must be a correlational study with 4 characteristics to prove cause. It must be longitudinal. A plus B come earlier in time than C. It cannot have shared method variance. A plus B plus C come from the same source or person. There also has to be control statistically for all the other things that might cause C. There also must be many correlational studies with these 3 characteristics that find the same result. Then you have proved A plus B equals C. One would also have to do it in other countries too for cultural studies, especially as there will be high variance. Question number 2, summarize the 2 types of development. There has been a move called nativism, which is the belief that we are designed to do certain things evolutionarily. For example, we are designed to walk and talk. Development is both biological and experience expectant, as well as experience dependent development. Experience expectant development results from overabundance of synapses, brain connections, that are created in utero. DNA directs the formation of these connections. For example, we are designed to walk and talk. This type of development happens in all people with normal brains. Experiences that are available in any normal human environment strengthen the existing connections and prune away existing connections not being used. For example, as a young child, you have to be put down around the age of 1 in order for the muscles to grow strong enough for your legs for you to walk. This type of development is effortless because you are not growing connectors, you are born with them. Experience-dependent development, on the other hand, does not have connections that are formed in utero. Genes do not play a role. For example, when a child is learning to read, they have to use different parts of their brain to do it. This type of development only happens to people with special experiences and environments that can cause the growth of brain connections. This type of development is effortful because you are growing connections. Test question number 3. Describe the development of cognition from infancy, early childhood, middle childhood, and adolescence. We are designed to develop and learn. We do not develop and learn because we get positive reinforcement, rather as a biological function of our development. During infancy, you sleep, and very slowly the brain is pruning itself. The individual ends up with a much more efficient brain, and with more practice and development, you can do more things automatically. Very young infants have a quite rich understanding of important concepts about the workings of the physical world. One such concept is object permanence. This is the state in which the child knows objects still exist even when they are taken out of sight. Another such concept is solidity, which is an infant's understanding that they can't penetrate solid objects. For example, they understand that they can't crawl through a wall. Gravity is another physical principle that has been examined. It has been found that infants as young as 4 months are sensitive to the rules of object motion, and were surprised when one solid object passed through another object. It has also been determined that infants as young as 6 months have an understanding of gravity and support, and that they understand the relationship between contact and support. The most important focus of early childhood cognition is to mentally represent and mentally organize the world. One way this is accomplished is through scripts. Children learn the order in which they need to do things, as when taking a bath, one must take off their clothes before they get into the tub. This is something people have to learn, and every culture has their own script. Young children are still learning scripts, so changes are often stressful to them. Therefore, honoring the script is very important to them. Concepts and categories is another way children organize the world. Human beings develop quickly. For example, we have to understand what is a chair, a wall, etc. We have to develop a mental representation of all things in the world. Children then have to group these concepts in their brains to use them. Therefore, a large amount of time is devoted to concept development in young children. In order to learn concepts, people have to develop theories related to the biological, physical, and psychological realities of the world. For example, biologically, we have to design theories of being alive, as in we have to drink, eat, etc. We also have to understand the physics of the world around us, as in round things roll, unstable objects fall, etc. We also have to develop a theory of psychology or an understanding of people. From this, young children understand what will happen when they hurt other people. They will cry or hurt them back. Another task for young children is to learn the symbols that represent these scripts, concepts, and categories. This is done with understanding of spoken word, which is a symbol representing a concept. It is also accomplished with drawings, models, pretend play, and written symbols, as in the written word. Middle childhood cognition is exemplified by a child's ability to look beyond appearances. They are also able to focus on multiple aspects of the tasks and are able to focus across transformations. They are also able to reverse mental operations. When the brain is less pruned, you can't jump back and forth in your thinking. With age, the brain becomes more pruned and myelinated, which allows for children to handle more things and can use the concepts and categories they created in early childhood to help with problem solving. Middle childhood is also indicated by a child's ability to think quantitatively. With this, children are able to think as a thoughtful problem solver. Middle childhood is when a person can start doing mental thinking, as they can do more than one thing at a time. The maturation of the brain allows these children to juggle more than one mental process at a time. Adolescent and adult cognition brings with it the ability to focus on the possible, meaning adolescents can think abstractly. This allows them to use hypothetic, deductive reasoning and interpersonal reasoning / logical thinking. This type of thinking is really difficult as it requires training. It is not part of normal cognition, rather it requires extensive education. Test question number 4. For each of the following areas of language development, perception, production of speech, word learning, and grammar, discuss the roles of biological processes and experiences, and discuss the implications for this research for professional practice. Language is symbolic communication. Within the area of perception and production of speech, biological process, and experiences, it is important to recognize that it is an experience-expectant brain development. DNA directs the brain to form connections in utero so that young infants can perceive differences between sounds in their own and other languages, and make sounds of languages. For example, babies will babble when their tongue has matured, even if they have never heard a sound. Babies are not imitating others. They perceive sounds and are able to make them. For example, deaf babies who have deaf parents still babble at 7 months. It is important to realize that experiences in any normal human environment, for example, hearing real people talk, strengthen connections that are being used and prune away connections that are not used. This allows infant babbling to sound like their own language, and it means that they will no longer be able to easily perceive the differences between sounds not in their language. This pruning gets rid of connections not being stimulated. This understanding of perception and production of speech has implication for research and professional practice. For example, we want to test hearing at birth and be aware of ear infections in early childhood, as abnormal hearing development may lead to destructive pruning. Word learning is an experience-dependent brain development. It is not run by our DNA. The experience of hearing words causes growth of brain connections. This means every word has a connection in our brains for future use. There are very large individual differences in vocabulary between children based on home experiences, which means children come to school with a varying range of vocabulary skills. However, biology also plays a role. Children learn words very quickly because they easily guess what the adult means when the adult labels objects. Because of biological constraints, our minds are designed to think certain ways, as with whole object assumption, which is the bias in the brain as in which the infant assumes when people are labeling things, they are labeling the whole thing. The object label refers to the whole object, not a part, substance, color, or size. There, children expect objects to have one and only one label. Another biological influence in word learning comes from the principle of mutual exclusivity. This is where we assume every word has only one meaning, one name. Therefore, children believe that things only have one name. This understanding of biology of word learning has application in professional practice. We understand that home experiences have a huge influence on vocabulary. Therefore, there's a wide achievement gap. The number of words children have is critical when they are learning to read. The difference in the educational level of parents has a strong correlation to this. Parents need to talk to their children, and reading at home can help to close the gap. This activity has been shown to provide children with the same level of language gain no matter the education of their parents. Because of this, teachers need to encourage libraries and book resources to parents. Schools also have to consider the value of directly teaching vocabulary to children. Observations around the world show that by 2.5, all children with normal brains speak in full sentences with normal grammar. Grammar develops in all children effortlessly and very quickly. It is an experience-expectant brain development. Chomsky's theory suggests that there is a universal grammar that is part of our biology. For example, most languages use word order as an important part of grammar. Word endings also play important roles: past, present, singular, plural, etc. Most languages use important parts of universal grammar. The grammars of the world's languages are similar because our minds can only create similar grammars. Our mind can only do things in certain ways. Any language or grammar a child learns already has their mind set up that way. The experience of hearing our languages helps us to pick out which of the universal grammar rules our language is using. Children will pick up these rules without explicit instruction. What this understanding of grammar means for professional practice is that we should refocus our teaching on writing conventions over grammar. Talking is not always clear, while writing needs to be very clear. Grammar is a biological given and we picked up by children with normal brains, naturally. Writing conventions are learned skills that require experience and education to be successfully implemented.